The Witch, a movie that came out this year and had tons of buzz. I haven't really heard as much about it lately, but when it came out in February, there was a lot of indie buzz, critic buzz, and all sorts about it, and it made about $25 million in the US alone. It's got like a 97% Rotten Tomatoes. But there does seem to be a divide among people who watch it on whether it's actually good or just horrendous. What do I think of it? Well, let's start with the acting, which I think is freaking superb. I love all of the performances in this movie, even if some of them could fall flat at a few moments. They just get a little too cartoony or just rather flat acting. But other than that, they were typically good. The main girl in this movie does a really good job. She carries the movie. Not to say the rest of the cast is bad, because they are far from it. The rest of the cast playing her family brought their characters to life. They are fantastic as well. But Anya Taylor-Jones, the girl playing the main character, delivers one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen in film, which honestly kind of saved the movie for me during its last 10-20 minutes. Not to say the movie's bad, but I'll get more into that when I go into the story. But I'll still talk about the acting. The kid actors are surprisingly good. The one playing the father, I thought, did a really good job up until his character kind of fell apart. And the mother, for what little time she gets, does a really good job in her role. As for the cinematography, music, and sound, they are all spectacular. The angles, lighting, colors, and other cinematographic elements that were used in this movie were amazing. It's one of the most beautifully shot movies I've seen in a while. The music was perfect for the scenes it was in. It is a type of original soundtrack that you would be able to listen to by itself, but combining it with the movie is just a stellar experience. The sounds in this movie are superb. The sounds for The Witch or other things are just really distinct and help make the world come to life. I know it's live action, but the sounds that they choose to use are really good. The story is where the movie fails a bit. For the first 50 minutes, it's really, really good, but it kind of slowly goes down in quality. It becomes a little too out there in scenes. The movie's already kind of out there, but it becomes a little bit too out there in the wrong way, and it does get a little boring in other scenes. I thought it was still really decent in that last half, but it wasn't as good as the first half. It just didn't meet those standards. The actual witch in the movie is a very interesting factor, but the family is what is central to this story. The witch is good, but the family is the core of this movie. The characters are all written really, really well during the first 50 minutes, but they start to falter in their quality in the last half. They can still be good, but especially the father, he starts to kind of go downhill a little bit in both his character motivations and everything. He starts to get unraveled, but it's not handled all that well. I thought it was still decent, but like I said, not up to the same standards. The last 10 minutes of this movie are probably the weakest of the film. I like them well enough, but they were rather bland and actually kind of cliche, surprisingly enough. It's a movie set in the 1600s, yet it can still have a bit of cliches I've seen in other horror films. I was surprised and disappointed by that. Except for one moment between Anya and her father that I won't spoil, but like I mentioned earlier in this video, it is one of the most well-acted scenes. It's just for a few moments, but it is really well acted, and you really feel the emotional turmoil and impact of the characters in that exact moment. The setting is used to its fullest in this movie, maybe a bit too much because it's set in the 1600s. It gets a little boring because they use some elements that maybe aren't the most interesting to modern audiences anyway. Overall, this is a good movie that unfortunately stumbles in its second half. It doesn't ruin its potential, but it does sour it to an extent. But again, it's a good movie with some really disturbing moments, Like one scene in the first 15 moments is just ugh. But overall, I would recommend this movie if you like a character-driven horror movie and can kind of withstand some faults It's not, like I said, it's still a good movie, but it does have its faults. Man, other than that, later.